Lesson 76 is about consecutive integers. Well, let's just think about what consecutive integers means. And that would just mean like integers that are one after another, like 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Those are consecutive integers. Now the second one is one more than the first one. The third one is two more than the first one. The fourth one is three more than the first one, and so on. So if we wanted to describe this using variables, where that first integer we called it n, the second one we would call it n plus 1, the third one n plus 2, the third one n plus 3, and so on. That's how we could describe consecutive integers using a variable. Now, why would we want to do it that way? Well, if we had a word problem where they were talking about consecutive integers, but they didn't tell us what this particular integer was, we might need a system such as that, n, n plus 1, n plus 2, to help us solve the problem. Look at this practice problem. It says, find 3 consecutive integers such that the sum of the first and the third is 18. So we're wanting to find these consecutive integers. We don't know what they are. So we can use that method that we just talked about and describe n, n plus 1, and n plus 2 as our 3 consecutive integers. Now, the problem says that the sum of the first one and the third one is 18. So that means we'll set the first one and the third one n plus the n plus 2, because it's the sum of those two. That's supposed to be equal to 18. So we make an equation, an algebraic equation, n plus 2 equals 18. Now we can add like terms. 2n plus 2 equals 18. Subtract 2 from both sides. That cancels, and we end up with 2n is equal to 16, and therefore n is equal to 8. Now that's not the answer though, right? The question was find 3 consecutive integers. So don't write 8 for the answer. You need to write 8. 8 plus 1 is 9. 8 plus 2 is 10. 8, 9, 10. That's really your answer. 3 consecutive integers. Let's do one more. Find 4 consecutive integers such that 3 times the sum of the first and the third is 32 less than the fourth. So we're trying to find these 4 consecutive integers. We don't know what they are, so let's just go ahead and describe them using variables. The first one we could call n, then n plus 1, then n plus 2, and then the fourth one would be n plus 3. Okay, so there's our 4 consecutive integers. Now let's apply them to making an algebraic equation based on the word problem here, such that 3 times the sum of the first and the third, so that would be 3 as a factor on the outside of the sum of the first one plus the third one, is, the sum of the first and the third is, there's our equal sign, 32 less than the fourth term. So we'd have to say n plus 3, that's our fourth term, subtract 32 from that, because it's 32 less than that fourth one. Okay, so now we have an equation. Let's go ahead and simplify it on the left first by expanding, or actually let's simplify inside the parentheses. So we'd say 3 times 2n plus 2, and then on the right we can just say n minus 29, because 3 minus 32 would be minus 29. Then go ahead and expand on the left. 6n plus 6 is equal to n minus 29. Subtract n from both sides, and while we're at it, why don't we go ahead and subtract 6 from both sides also. So the n's cancel on the right, the 6's on the left. We end up with 5n is equal to negative 35. So if we divided both sides by 5, we'd end up with n equals negative 7. And so our consecutive integers are negative 7, negative 8, negative 9, and negative 10. Now, Hopefully you caught my mistake there. I did that on purpose. Sometimes I do make mistakes that I don't mean to, but that time I did. Think about what the mistake is. We can't say -7, -8, -9, -10. That doesn't work. Think about your consecutive integers. They start with n, which is -7. Then what's next? N plus 1. So the next one should be -6. The next one should be -5. And the next one should be -4. That's an important thing to notice when you have a negative answer for n. They get progressively smaller. And it's actually the absolute value that gets progressively smaller. The number gets progressively greater, though, because -4 is greater than -7, right? So try to keep that in mind when you have a problem like this and you get a negative answer. You have to add 1, then 2, then 3 to make your consecutive integers. Okay, well that's all for lesson 76.